Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I hope you had an awesome holiday. Well, we're not through the holidays, but an awesome Christmas if you celebrate, or Hanukkah, or whatever you're celebrating. I hope it was awesome. Hope your seahorse tanks and reef tanks are doing fabulously. If you are on Instagram, obviously Kelly was on vacation, so we have not fixed the graphics yet, but hopefully it's a little more centered for you. And if you want to see us and actually see us instead of just hearing us, hop on over to YouTube, search Seahorse Whisperer, and we're live right there. When you subscribe, you get entered into our contest that we'll be promoting soon because we're less than 100 people away from 3,000 subscribers. So help us out. Get on over there, subscribe, watch the video, join the video. We more than welcome you to join in and, of course, ask questions in the comments. If you just want to listen, feel free on Instagram. And thank you to everybody on Facebook and YouTube that are watching. Before we get chit-chatting, couple of things. First off, I did do a post, excuse my sea dragon there, but I wanted to show really quickly. I probably won't use this every Wine Wednesday because it's so beautiful. I don't want to ruin it. And the last glass that was given to me by a guest or a friend was ruined when I dropped it on a Wine Wednesday. But look at this. It's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I've never seen something so pretty. And this is my new glass that I won't be using all the time on Wine Wednesday because it's so pretty. But thank you so much. It was from Holly. So thank you, Holly.
You're very welcome. It's even more stunning in person. It looks better than when I was choosing it. Honestly, it's gorgeous.
I can't believe, I mean, yeah, you'd have to actually
How
see it
was
to
mine?
believe.
How was mine look?
No, Ray. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that apparently everybody thinks that I love wine. But my significant other also got me stemless, whoops, I'm doing it wrong,
Nice,
engraved K stemless wine glasses. So I'm double dipping tonight. I got Pinot
nice.
Noir and Chardonnay. Whatever you have, welcome to Wine Wednesday. Cheers to you. And real quick, before we get into seahorse chat, I wanted to mention too, this is the last night. I have to give. Okay, so next week, Dan from Seahorse Source, who has been doing seahorses, breeding, keeping seahorses, advising people on seahorses, running a helpline, and helping on seahorse.org for I can't even tell you how many years, probably 20 or more.
18 and a half years.
18. Okay, thank you, Ray. So he will be our special guest next week. But we've posted for the past 2 weeks. We meant to do it while I was in Florida. I did get to visit with Dan, which was amazing, and I'll talk more about that later. But we had to postpone because of my family's travel arrangements. We just got mixed up, so we had to cancel one Wednesday last week. We're going to do the Ask Seahorse Source next week on the 5th of January. But we have to have all our questions in by tonight. So I already have a bunch from all of you. Thank you for everybody who did post questions for Seahorse Source. But the post is on my page, the Seahorse Whisperer page, and also in Seahorse Source's group. So it's also on Instagram too, and TikTok and everywhere else. So if you see the post, Ask Seahorse Source, please post your questions because we will make time at the end of the episode for any questions that you might have if you're just joining us. But we want to give him time to really prepare and have solid answers and examples and stuff like that. So I'm going to give him the questions at midnight tonight. So get your questions in if you want to. And yeah, I had some more to say about Florida, but I wanted to know real quick, guys, how was your Christmas? How was your holiday? Miss Cheryl, you go first.
Well, I had a great holiday because we always have, normally we didn't do it last year, but this year we went ahead and had our Christmas Eve party and Christmas Day party. But the weather has been so warm and unseasonably warm here, we were able to do it because we were all outside.
Mm-hmm.
And you wear masks, you stay outside, you keep your distance. And it was just wonderful to actually be able to see all family and friends again, all in one place.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you got to. I know. Holly, how about you?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I had a week off. I always take Christmas week off because it's slow for me that time of year anyway. So I took that off. I did a lot of baking, and we spent a day with my mother-in-law Christmas Eve and went out to eat and stuff, and then Christmas here at home. And The seahorses got some nice presents, which they're enjoying right now. and and so yeah, it's been nice. We didn't get a white Christmas, but we have a white right now. We have about a foot of snow that we've got in the last day or so. It's
Mhm.
it's been snowing since yesterday. We had snow the week before that. So we had snow the week before Christmas. We had no snow during Christmas, but then after Christmas, we got snow. And it's actually for where I live in Northern California, it's the most snow we've had in 50 years, they say, within that time period. We set a record.
I was gonna say, how
Where I
crazy you're
live,
getting snow.
St.
You're
Tahoe area.
you're getting snow in California, and we haven't seen a drop in Indiana. You know, it's
Well, we
kind of
usually
crazy.
get it here, but not that much. You got to
Right.
remember, I'm in
Well, I've
North
only had to use the blower
California.
twice, and normally by this time I'd have used it about 5 or 6 times.
Oh,
What was
okay.
that,
Well,
Ray?
go ahead, Ray.
I missed that.
I said I've only had to use the snow blower twice. Normally by now I would have used it 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I use the
Scott
blower
had to
whenever it's too
shut our
deep for me to
sidewalk
shovel.
4 times today.
Yep.
We hit 80 today here in Texas at my house. That actually broke the records.
You broke
Wow.
a record too. The opposite record.
Yeah.
So we're
Oh, but
going up
gonna
in
be
temperature
crazy.
to the
It's
freezing
kinda
mark
crazy.
around 3 o'clock this morning, and the snow is going to change to freezing rain.
Wow, that's not cool. But
Yeah.
Ray and Salty, I see what you're saying. I'm gonna say it in just a second. But Ray, you kind of told us before, but you did get to see your family a little bit, right? I know you're extremely careful because
Just with 2 of
Omicron.
them. Just with 2 of them. Like all my kids live out of town now. There was one that lived in the city here, but they moved out uh, just about a half an hour outside of the city in a little town. But it's still like they had their Christmas and everything with their kids, and it's too much for me to have them come here, especially when my granddaughter. I don't want to get around her because she goes to the University of Maine. She's on a hockey scholarship,
Yep.
and so she's just come back from the University of Maine, and COVID
Yep.
from the States is worse than here in Canada.
I was gonna say, first of all, I want to say I'm just glad that you made it through, got to see family, and didn't get sick, Ray. But Salty Reef said he's had better luck, had a string of bad luck the past 3 weeks. Salty, if you feel like jumping in and cheering, feel free. But if not, I'm just so sorry to hear that. And my big announcement, I was so upset the other day, you guys, because you guys know I went to Florida. Timing got cut off, but Dan still came to see me, and we had an awesome lunch. We talked about so many things. I'm not going to share everything until next week when he's our special guest. But he helped me with my seahorse stuff. I happen to have an awesome seahorse sitter. I did a post about it, and I'll tell you, we've talked on this channel many times about going on vacation and how nerve-wracking it is if you have seahorses. And you can, we've talked plenty. You can go back and watch previous Wine Wednesdays. We've talked about having cameras set up so you can observe. We've talked about going to your local store and asking for help. We've talked about, live feeds that can last you like for a weekend or whatnot. But having a seahorse sitter that cares, that will FaceTime you, that has that animal love instinct that they just know, hey, the seahorses, even though my seahorse sitter never kept seahorses, you guys, ever. She doesn't know anything about them. I went through my extensive mumbling, jumbling instructions, but she did an amazing job. I came home to seahorses that were more yellow than they've ever been with me, if that tells you anything. And they were happy. I mean, they came up, they were ready to see me, and they were ready to get food, but she really connected with them and Katie Ross, you are amazing. I love you. And now, unfortunately for her, I'm going to call her every time. But getting back to the point, I was able to have an amazing vacation because I had such an amazing seahorse sitter. And we'll talk more about that in future episodes about everything I told her and how we communicated and how it worked out. But the scary part, I'm rambling, I know, but I'm getting to it, is that we had this amazing vacation. And then we get home, and the next day after we got home, my throat kind of hurt, right? And I'm like, did I just smoke too much? I'm a smoker, guys, sorry. Vape too much, whatever. And then, or maybe, we had wine every night at dinner, vacation. Maybe did I drink too much something? Do I have a hang? I wasn't sure. I just didn't feel great. I didn't feel terrible. I was like, it's nothing, whatever. Nobody else in my family was sick. And then my sister and my sister's fiance called the entire family and said, we just tested positive for COVID. So you all need to get tested. So, and we were in Florida, which, I know the cases are rising there. But the only things that and I'm not saying one thing or another, other than we weren't masking up. So it's our own darn fault. And interestingly enough, my significant other is very against vaccines. We're not going to go political, guys. We're getting ready to talk seahorses in 10 seconds. But the funny thing is, he has had COVID once, possibly twice. And I don't know how the antibodies work or whatnot, but he didn't get sick. Whereas the rest of my family, most of them didn't get sick, but a few of them that were triple boosted, vaccinated, did get sick. So it's pretty confusing. I don't know, but it was scary. And I was like, Dan, oh my gosh, please be careful, make sure. And he's fine too. So scary kind of thing, but we made it through. I'm done rambling. Let's talk seahorses. And Francis is asking questions. But okay, guys, aside from your wonderful Christmases with your families, what's going on with your seahorses? Because I have some news on that too. Cheryl, anything new with your fry?
Well, the one female that I got from Alicia, I posted a picture on her Facebook page. That seahorse, she's probably close to doubled in size. She's only been with me for 2 months. And if you look at the picture, you can actually see how the light is reflecting off the chromatophores. And actually, she's got couple different colors on her torso. And I was looking at that. It was just really cool when I saw that picture and went, wow.
Yeah. And I mean, and how amazing is it that you've kept the color and she's grown so fast? Just shows that Seahorse Savvy is a wonderful place to buy seahorses, period. I mean, you obviously are caring for her tremendously, but amazing that you can still get quality seahorses.
Well, the thing is, I'm so cautious about mixing. I don't mix different species. I don't mix seahorses from different sources. I learned the hard way years ago. And it's so much easier. Bare bottom tanks. So all I do is once a day, at the end of every day, all detritus of any type is cleaned out every day. And it's little things like that. We had 60 degrees and snow next day.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it only takes me if I do it every day, it only takes me a couple minutes to clean the tank.
I think Holly and I have talked before about the fact that if you're doing a good job, like my seahorse sitter did, and no, Seahorse Corner, unfortunately, she won't drive to Pennsylvania, but find someone near you, because having a seahorse sitter is everything. I'm telling you, I was able to relax and enjoy my vacation because I'll talk about it later. Anyways, but Cheryl, real quick, what about your fry? Are all the fries still doing well?
So far, so good. This was a first-time pair, and
Yes.
I'm actually a little surprised at how well they're doing, considering, because usually once the males are full grown, they'll carry the fry, produce a nice big fry. But usually first-time pairs produce pretty tiny little fry compared to what they can do later on. So it's always I don't worry too much about it at first.
Yeah. When you're excited to have fry like I am, because I'm so excited to get back into it, then you're watching every move and scared about everything. Cheryl's got the ticket. You can't over worry for sure. And big news on my end, my male did not have fry while I was gone on vacation. Woo! So But in Seahorse Corner, I'm curious how your tiger tails are doing and if they're sporting some fry yet. I want some. But Holly, how about you? How are the seahorses? I know you've posted
Oh,
about Thing 2.
yeah. So my little Christmas miracle thing too. He is back home in the grow out tank with his siblings. I'm treating him with Alamax and Aladerm, and there's one that's a liquid and one that's a gel. And so what I do twice a day, he's got like um the tail wound, from his infection, and he has a spot along his pouch where he had it too. And so I put a drop of the liquid version. I think that's the Alamax into each wound and blow on it a little bit to dry it off, and then I coat that with the gel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
And I'm just thinking that might help seal in the liquid. I don't know
Yep.
if it does or not. I'm just swinging it, but I'm hoping that'll help it penetrate more. So I've been watching him, kind of been posting pictures, and Cheryl's been checking it out too. So watch his healing progression because it's probably going to take a long time.
it will. The thing is, the torso one is slowly. You can start seeing it to slightly re- come together a little bit. I
Mhm.
am concerned about his tail. He
Mhm.
may lose a portion of his tail.
Mhm.
So, but if he does, seahorses can do fine.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm not as worried about that really. Like I kind of heard that. So I mean, if he loses his tail, he loses his tail, but then he'll be healing. He'll be healed.
Yes.
Exactly.
But he
The tail
has
is so
that
hard.
spot along his pouch. That's part of his body. And so I'm really watching that close for redness. Like Cheryl pointed out, like if it's red or pink, that's sign of infection. The white is the dead tissue, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
If you notice, if you look at the edges of the lesion on his pouch area,
Mhm.
you can see where new tissue is starting to fold up around it.
Mm-hmm.
You got a
Okay.
little bitty ridge around there now that you didn't have a couple days ago, and that's
Okay.
exactly what you want to see because it tells me that that this tissue is slowly healing.
And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm seeing, I'm wondering about this because the hole itself seems, because remember it was like a hole, it
Yep.
seems to be getting smaller.
It is,
The white part is getting bigger, like taking up more space.
but
So,
that's partly an optical illusion because that
Yeah.
hole was pretty large and the hole is being covered, so you don't have the perspective of part of
The
that.
skin growing.
Yeah,
Right.
the skin is actually growing back across it now. And that's why I'm
Okay.
saying that's what I look for in a wound like he had. When it starts to heal, the skin actually kind of gets like almost like folds, it looks like ridges all around the wound.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is non necrotic new tissue that's proliferating. And he is finally starting to do that.
Well, and
Okay.
We have a store
I'm
here.
thinking of a.
Posting
Oh, whoa, whoa,
pictures.
whoa! We're all talking. Hang
Help
on, hang on.
me,
Holly,
help
talk.
me
Go ahead.
watch and let me know, if you see something that concerns you, because
Right,
I'm
and
not used to looking at it.
Well,
I have
I
time.
was just gonna say, like in the case of even you get hit, you get a bruise, and it looks so much. It gets bigger
It
before it
gets
gets
bigger.
better. You know.
Yeah.
And
well,
I just want to say also, Holly, amazing job. I'm going to start following in your footsteps because, and we'll talk about my seahorse's tail ball in a second, but it's amazing that you're posting stuff. Like usually people go to Facebook and Instagram and they post, look at my beautiful seahorses.
Mhm.
They're so perfect and look at them and it's wonderful. I think applause to you for posting, look, there was a problem. Here's how I'm fixing it because that will actually help people later.
yeah.
Ray, were you going to say something?
Yeah, we had a store here in Toronto some years ago, advertised stubby-tailed seahorses for sale.
Oh, no.
They were trying to convince people that this was a breed of
This,
seahorse.
yeah,
Oh
All
my
it
Uh,
was they had
I,
that
I
the
remember that.
supplier that they were buying from had a big batch that got infected, lost their tails, and half their tails were gone, and they were being sold as stubbies.
Yeah.
Right. And I do want to
He
ask about
claimed- he
the
claimed there
ball
was
on the
something
tail,
wrong
but
with
real
them.
quick, I just want to say, Salty, I saw your comment. You guys can see it on the screen. Dropped a black box LED in my 120 and cracked it. Then
Oh.
ended up with COVID for Christmas. I am so sorry. I really pray and hope that you are feeling better. Let me know how the symptoms are, how you're doing. Oh, I just feel terrible about that. But go ahead. What were the rest of you going to say?
And did Frances get an answer to her question yet?
I'm going to that next. That's
Let's
next.
not do that.
But Ray, real quick before we go to her question, you doing okay with seahorses and everything else? Your
No,
seahorse
they're
is
still
good?
down there. I can't find anybody that wants them.
Oh no. Anybody in Canada? You know what? I think I said I'd do it before. I'm gonna reach out to Devin, because Reef Dudes, because he was interested in seahorses. So, and he's in Canada. So
He has to be able to look after them at the cold temperatures, though.
right. But
Won't give them to anybody that hasn't got a chiller or something,
Chiller.
some means keeping it cool.
I know you're strict, Ray, but he actually is like really large, meaning not large. He's not large. He's very skinny. But I mean, I mean that he has a huge following. So if he needed a chiller, he could get it from a sponsor. So I'm going to reach out to him right after we get off of this because that'd be awesome. All right, but I'm glad they're still doing well. And I appreciate that you only will give them to someone who will care for them. Maybe Farm Boy too, I'll reach out to. But all right, Francis wanted to know, this is open chat, guys, so ask any questions. Don't forget to ask your serious questions for next week's Seahorse Source guest interview. But tonight we're open chat. So Francis says, you can see it on the screen. I'm having a hair green filament algae issue in my 55. I'm unsure of the hydrogen peroxide method ratios and how to apply it. Is there a file to refer to? And is it safe with seahorse inverts and soft body corals?
You have to be careful the dose. I know that I do a little bit of it, but I can't do enough for the algae, honestly, because of the inverts and things. But
I can't help on treating that way. I've never ever had hair algae in my 19 years looking after it, and people are sick and tired of me telling them that it's there because there's nutrient there that shouldn't be there. What goes in must come out, and if it's not going to come out, the algae is going to grow.
Yeah, the thing is, with I've never used hydrogen peroxide to treat for algae. Basically, my attitude is if I get green hair algae or bryopsis or any of that kind of stuff, I've got a problem with my filtration system. I'm not doing adequate filtration to remove the nutrients. So what I'll tend to do is increase my flow, double my cleanup, my water changes, and particularly in newer tanks that are more recently set up, it's part of the normal process also. So if it's a recently set up tank and I get a little green hair algae, I don't worry about it. If it's a tank that's been set up for a long time that all of a sudden has an algal bloom, I'm going to be running for the water changes.
Well, but here's what my 2 cents. And
Fiji rocks that grow it.
Wait. Here's my 2 cents. And Francis, I will ask Dan this question next week because he's better with the dosage and the actual question that you're asking about how much can I put in without hurting anything and etc. And I will say that when you're using peroxide or anything like that, what really matters is having a huge skimmer or some way of removing what you kill, right? Because if you use peroxide, like you squirt peroxide directly on algae and it kills it instantly, and that's great. But all the spores and all the dead algae just feeds the other algae. So we'll dive deeper into this conversation next week because I honestly can't answer the exact dosage either. I'd have to look it up. That's why we want to ask Dan the questions ahead of time so he can literally say, this is my recommendation for this and this and this. Also, I want to say it really does depend on your tank. For anybody new that's watching this, it totally, as Cheryl said, it depends on it whether the tank is new or old. It also depends on your skimmer rating. It depends on if you have rocks that are leaching phosphate. It depends on if you have coral in the tank. It depends on so many things. So while we're here to answer questions, if you if you could, we'd love to answer this better next week, but we can try more this week. I can't help you with exact dosage, but if you tell us a little bit more about your tank, I'm sure you already have, but every week I forget. Sorry. But it just depends. If you have coral, how many seahorses, how big's the tank, what kind of filtration do you have, etc. Because I personally use peroxide. I dose it full tank. I've dosed it directly. I've used it in skimmers. There are so many methods that we can help you to alleviate the problem, but we need to know more about your specifics.
And
Go ahead,
how
Holly.
often do the
One thing I
mechanical filter
can
tanks
say, because I
Wait,
dose
wait,
per
wait, wait, wait. We
for
were
a
all talking at the
different
same time, and the last thing I did want to say is, while I agree with Cheryl, sometimes when you have algae, nuisance algae, and you do water changes, it just feeds it. So it really does depend on the circumstances. All right, Holly first, then Ray. Holly, go.
So I do dose peroxide, but I don't do it for algae control. I do it to help prevent parasites, like
Oxidization.
the ciliates, keep ciliates down. So I have a 55-gallon tank, and I'm dosing 10 milliliters twice a day. My sump's about 15, 20 gallons, I'd say, and it doesn't do a thing to the algae. So I can tell you that much.
Do you have inverts though?
I do. I have
Okay.
3 peppermint shrimp. I have got little crabs in there and things. So yeah, I can't. If you have those things, I think the dose of peroxide to kill algae is too high for those things, if I remember right.
Well, I know I did it in my reef, to be completely honest. This is a question that we will cover in depth next week. Not only will Dan have an answer, but I will research also and remember what I did and what works and etc. So come back next week. I'm sorry you have to wait, but algae's not going to kill you in a week.
Yeah, 'cause
Ray, what
I'd
were you
like
going to say?
know too.
Basically, I found almost exclusively when anybody I've talked to ends up with hair algae. And then when I ask about how often they're cleaning out the filtration system, uh, some of them don't even do it once a week. And I believe it needs to be done twice a week to get it before it's decaying and producing the elements that are producing the algae. And I found it especially true if someone is using canister filters, because a canister filter is a pain in the ass to clean out. So while you start off with good intentions, somehow, well, I've got to do this. I'll get that tomorrow, and then tomorrow gets put off again. And then when you do it after a few more times over a few months, that nutrient level builds up, and it's not something that you can see until that nuisance stuff starts. Then you're seeing it.
No, absolutely agree.
I forgot too.
Sorry, go ahead, Ray.
I'd be interested in the science behind that statement you made where doing water changes makes it worse.
Okay, I'll get that for you next week too. But I'm telling you, in certain circumstances, you're feeding especially if your salt or whatnot has any kind of added nutrients, you're feeding it. But we'll talk next week because I don't have the science.
Say my
I'll get the
tanks are
science.
almost identical, and I have no algae problem in one. I have the same sump, same systems in both of them. The only one I have the algae problem is the one with the rocks and the fancy lighting.
They're leaching.
That's wait. Cheryl, I know you want to talk. Hang on, one thing. The other huge thing we haven't discussed yet is the lighting. It makes every difference. Every difference.
And I think mine may have reversed my programming with the power outages. I've had a ton of power outages last few months. And I can't tell because I reprogrammed the lighting so it would be lower range. And I think it's gone back to the original programming, which is the higher light. And that is having something to do with it. Well, but I'd have to look at it, and it takes me like an hour to program the darn thing. and I have power going out and on like 3 or 4 times a day. So I'm like, I haven't
Right.
messed with the lights lately, but that might have something to do with it too.
Well, I just know that I personally got a cheap light for the 40-gallon all-in-one. And I do have rock in there, but it was rock that I had bleached and recycled. So I don't think that the rock was the problem. What Holly's talking about, we've talked about in previous episodes, that if you buy like live rock, you know, if that's your choice, that's what you want to do. Sometimes that live rock can be
A
leaching
pain in the butt.
phosphate. Yeah, it can be leaching phosphate. But in my case, the rock was all bleached and recycled. So I know that's not the case. That's not the problem. And I do know one thing that I was doing wrong was I was adding too much vibrance to my food. And so it was literally making too many organics in the tank.
You're
And then
feeding
number
the algae.
two, right, feeding. And then number two, the lighting. When you get a cheap light, like lighting is the one thing. If you're going to do seahorses and you don't have coral, I would say don't even do lighting. Seriously, use room lighting. They don't need the light. And when you put a light on the tank and you try to program it, and it's not a light that's like a cheap light is never going to be the correct full spectrum or whatnot. And then when you mess with it, like I do, and make it more white so you can take good pictures or videos, then it's just the lighting is just beating down and making algae, period.
One of the things that I do when I get green hair algae is I will, over a couple week period, I go in, manually remove anything that's stuck on like an airline. I will take out a couple of rocks, scrub them down with a toothbrush, run them through fresh salt water, and I can usually clear up green hair algae problems within a week and a half to 2 weeks. Or you could, if you wanted to, you could add an algae scrubber. But I found just manually removing the stuff, and it's do some changes, and it doesn't come back.
Well,
No,
again, I just want to say for anyone new that, sorry, Holly, I just want to say for anyone new that comes to this channel, that lady right there, I'm trying to point, and that guy right there have been doing this for too many years to count. So they know what's up. They figured it out. But if you're new, and when they say things like, "Oh, you shouldn't have pouch emphysema ever because it's an organics thing," or Ray says, "Oh, people get sick of me telling you if you have algae, it's because you're not controlling your organics." I want to punch him, punch her the wrong way. But I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Algae is part of the normal tank growth cycle. It's going to happen. It's most common in newer systems, but it's very manageable.
Yes.
And for me, I don't want to put stuff in my tanks with my seahorses. I don't like adding chemicals and stuff. And I found I can, in less than 2 weeks, completely wipe out a green hair algae problem. Just stuff.
Well, here's
know what to do.
Here's my homework. Wait. One more second, Holly. Here's the homework for next week. All three of you and myself, we're going to be with Dan next week, but let's all have that as a question. How do you deal with hair algae or algae in your seahorse tank? And that will help because we all have different types of tanks. We have to explain again that it depends on lighting, if you have a sump, if you have too many things, if you have rock. So let's all cover that next week in depth. But go ahead, Holly. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to ask about the cleaning the rocks because one time, a long time ago, because my tank's been up for about 4 years now, but there was a time when it was newly set up, and I had algae growing, and I did like it's about a 2 or 3 minute peroxide dip for rocks with a certain percentage of the peroxide. And I don't remember what that is. I didn't write it down. I haven't done it. But can you take rocks out and clean them?
I do.
I do too.
I pull them out, put them in a bucket of salt water, take a toothbrush or some other kind of brush, brush off all the algae off of them so they're completely clean,
Mm-hmm.
and put them back in. And I'll do 2 or 3 at a time because I'm not killing off the bacteria,
Mm-hmm.
but I
So
am
with
killing
toothbrush and what kind of water? Salt water, or did you say
regular
fresh?
salt mix
Regular salt water. Okay.
because
So
I don't want to kill the bacteria. What I want to
Exactly.
get rid of is the darn green hair algae.
So depending on what's going on, I do it a bit differently. I actually will pull just like a piece by piece thing, and you have to be careful because the second you put it back in, it's able to collect the algae again. But I do it piece by piece. I do salt water, but I will peroxide the crap out of it, scrub the crap out of it. I know I'm killing the bacteria. I make sure it sits and it's not leaching, but I do it slowly, piece by piece. So
Yeah, if you
see how we do things different? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
it depends. Like my tanks are all bare bottom.
Right.
They typically have very little rock work in the tank. It's all mostly artificial hitches. The only real
Yeah.
rock work is in the sumps. But then I've got sumps that are about 50%. Well, they're about 50% of the water volume of the main tank or more. So I've got a lot of room for rock in my
Yeah,
sumps.
you have big sumps.
Well,
so-
and I'm going to say, I know, Francis, that I connected with you on Messenger. So maybe over the next week, you could give me more details about your tank. And we could, if you feel like it, if you want to, we could do by example, talk about what we would do in that specific situation. I think that would be cool. But we got to move on, guys. So Ray, real quick, backtracking. Seahorse Corner wanted to know how cold they need
Oh,
the abdominalis.
oh, they can't be any higher than 68 degrees when you're in the Fahrenheit scale. That's 20 degrees centigrade.
Yeah.
And they're one of the hardiest seahorses, but you do have to keep them cold.
Well, they're
All right.
hardy because of that cool temperature.
Right. I know. I get it. And then Francis asked, how often should filters be changed out? I'm changing all 3 of my filtration systems weekly and skimmer to account for an overload of nutrients as well. And Francis, again, I want to know what your 3 filtration systems are and what your skimmer is rated and all those details. But what do you guys have to say to that?
I change my socks every day.
Whoa. Holly first.
Yeah.
I change my socks every day and clean out the skimmer every day at the same time. I have a really big skimmer in each sump, so they only need cleaning once a day. But I have had smaller skimmers that I had to clean out more than once a day. So it depends on the size of your skimmer. If it's collecting stuff, I walk by several times a day, and if there's stuff, I empty it out. And mine are so big now that it'll take 24 hours to get any stuff built up enough for me to empty it. But the socks I change out every morning, whether I see anything in them or not.
I'm so glad you said that, because maybe that's something that I'm personally doing wrong. Because in the 40-gallon all-in-one, you guys, if you watched Wine Wednesday, you heard I had terrible trouble getting this skimmer to work because it was rated for 60 gallons, but the tank is 40 gallons. I didn't put a sump on it because I was trying to show how people could keep seahorses in a smaller tank. But this skimmer rated 60 gallons would overflow instantly. And then Salty Reef helped me realize that it's mainly because you have to let a skimmer break in. Now, I literally don't touch that tank until I have to do a water change. And I do weekly water changes, and I do big ones like 30, 40%. Ray probably doesn't think that's big enough. But when I do the water changes, I clean the pumps, I clean the skimmer, I empty the skimmer, but it doesn't need emptied for that week until I do the water change. And with the socks, Holly, I'm only changing the socks during water change. So I'm curious.
Well, I used to, and then somebody because I asked a question once on, I think, Seahorse Source, I said, how often do people change their socks? Because I was doing it when I did my water changes, but they were getting a lot of algae in them or whatever, and gunk. And somebody said, well, you have to remember that even though they're still working or whatever, all that stuff is sitting in the water during that time.
True.
So
True.
I
But also,
No,
isn't that
no,
making the
gallons
sock
of it
more?
every day.
But isn't that making this? I think I don't want to speak for him. We'll ask him again. This is another question I'll ask next week. But I think Dan said to me at some point, when it does get a little gunked up, it's actually helping because it makes it work even more efficiently because it's not
Only
allowing
because
even
it's
more crap through.
disintegrating and producing other smaller particles that are in turn decaying, and all the time that decay is happening, you're putting the nutrient into the water.
Okay, so wait. So if I take my socks out with every water change weekly, and they're not gunked up, they get slimy-ish, but there's no gunk in them.
You should change your socks every day.
Okay, that's the answer.
That's
That's
too
the
often
answer.
for me. I would never do it every day.
How often do you do it,
If I
Ray?
have to do it every day, I'm feeding away too much.
So how often do you do it?
Twice a week.
Twice a week.
Same
Cheryl,
with-
how about you?
If
Oh,
there's any
sorry.
filter on the tank, the pads need doing twice a week. If there's a canister filter, especially twice a week.
Yes,
Thing-
Ray had
Personal
a
feeling.
great
And
point.
by the way, the size of the water change, I do large water changes because I don't use all this other filtration. So it's
Right.
not a case that you have to use large water changes all the time. It all depends on how your system is set up.
Yep.
But you have to know that the method you are using is going to work to a certain level if you are doing a certain level of water changes. And if it's not, you have to increase your water changes or change the filters.
Get better filtration. Your input of food and organics has to equal your output. That's it. No, and he's right. And that's why, guys, when you guys come and ask questions, we love it and we want to help, but we need more details because it's just not a case where you can make a blanket statement where you have to do this amount of water changes. It's not that way. It depends on what you have. And like the Seahorse Corner, she has 3 canisters and 5 skimmers, and she's wonderfully nuts, and she does all this extra filtration, so she doesn't have to do as much. In my case, on my bigger tank, I have an algae scrubber, a skimmer rated for 160-gallon tank, and the tank is only 60 gallons. In that case, I don't have to do water changes like I do in the 40-gallon all-in-one that I do have a canister on. But Ray made a great point too, that we try to hit on constantly with canisters. There's nothing wrong with them. They're good as long as you don't get into that habit of thinking it's good because you can't see the gunk. You got to make sure you change it out.
Yeah.
And I think Cheryl wants to speak, but I want to say thank you to whoever just subscribed. Tell all your friends, guys, we're going to hit 3,000. Go ahead, Cheryl.
It comes down to one, if you're using filter socks, what's their micron rating? There's going to be a big difference between 100 micron and a 200 micron in what they collect. You're also got to look at your skimmer. Every system I have has a skimmer that's rated for 180 gallons minimum. And that's even on where I've got 2 20-gallon nursery tubs plumbed into a 29-gallon sump. So that's 60. So I'm still right there running a skimmer rated much higher than well, it is necessary with seahorses. You need a well-rated, good skimmer. Typically, I have reef breeder photons, which are some expensive lights, but I use them on the lowest settings on my seahorse tanks because I don't want the extra light. Light encourages algal growth also. So it's about how do you have your system set up. Everything is on a sump. I do not use any canister filters anymore, ever. They're just too big of a pain to.
That's how I feel about them too. I've had canister filters in the past and I don't like them. Once I went to the sump, it's so much easier to maintain.
Well, and all my sumps, I've built all my sumps myself. So it's easy because I know exactly how wide I want to build the baffles, what I'm going to put in the baffles. I run Purigen and run activated carbon in the system, just a couple more tools that I use. I run K1 Media Reactors, which a lot of people don't. So my filtration is very different compared to what a lot of people run. So is my lighting.
Okay, real quick, guys. I see all the other questions and we're going to get to them, I promise. We do have to shorten this tonight because I have to pick up my daughter from work at 10. But I do have a K1 Media Reactor question for you, Cheryl. And I think I asked you on the side, but here was the deal. I already told you guys my seahorse sitter did an amazing job. And as we're covering, it depends on your system. And for anybody new, I just have to keep repeating, you don't have to do all this crazy stuff. I'm proving right now that you can keep seahorses in a 40-gallon all-in-one effectively. Just you have to do maybe more work. And I personally have a canister attached, and I like it because I remember to change it, and it's literally just filled with floss. It's not really filtration; it's more like a big sock, right? But anyways, my question is, and don't let me forget to ask the ball and the tail question, Cheryl, either. But my question about the K1 Media Reactor is I have a homemade one. The video is coming, I promise, on how I made it. But when I got home, my wonderful seahorse sitter, I hadn't told her about it. So I didn't tell her to check it. Well, because it was on an air pump, right? I mean, it worked for a year now or whatever, 6 months now.
You don't do anything with it for years. It sits there.
Right. So my point is, I get home, the pump is barely whining and it's not spinning anymore. And I had no idea how long it hadn't been spinning. So it's all still underwater. It's all still in the water. The bacteria I don't think would die, but can you, and if you can't, we can talk more about it next week with Dan, but I would like to know a little bit more about why the sorry, kids coming in, why the bumping of media, the rotation of the media is so important and what happens if it doesn't. Because I didn't know if it had been off for an hour or 2 days. I had no idea.
First of all, it's designed for aerobic metabolism, which means you need an airline and air supply to keep it alive and going. It's also designed to convert nitrites to nitrates. And as such, because the media is continuously tumbling, it's self-cleaning. What happens is if it doesn't continue to tumble, you're going to get a buildup of detritus in there, and it could potentially become toxic if it malfunctioned long enough. And mine, I built all mine myself out of old skimmer bodies, but they are very effective. They were actually designed. Initially, the K1 Media was designed to treat sewage and purify sewage before being returned into live waterways. And it's proven very, very effective because it is self-cleaning, because it's got a huge surface area that for bacteria to attach to, and it's very efficient. It's also very cheap. One of the few things in this hobby that is cheap, by the way. And it would depend on how long it was down, whether it still had air. As long as it had air and some water movement, I would expect you to get some detritus buildup in there when the media not moving like it should, but it should not have killed all the bacteria.
Well, I will say what I ended up doing based on yours and Dan's advice is because I was freaking out. I was like, is it dead bacteria? Do I have to put it in somewhere else and let it start spinning and spin off dead? And both of you were like, no, stop it. Don't be so you. Don't be so you. And so what I did is I turned it on. I added a bit of prime, and then I did a big water change. No problems.
No problem.
So,
yeah, it doesn't.
I mean, but it was still underwater, and it still had air. It just wasn't enough to spin it.
Exactly. It was still seeded with the bacteria. The only problem is it wasn't. The reason you want the movement is to remove the detritus from too much accumulating in there and negatively impacting the filter media.
Gotcha. Okay, and Francis, as for the tiger tail, well, we can do it tonight. Do tiger tail males practice their mating humping? I love that behavior. I saw my tiger tail Jimmy for the first time humping the air.
I was gonna say that's a seahorse thing.
All seahorses practice their mating humping. Even the little young male that I got from Alicia here, that's also orange, he's only a little over 3 inches, and he's learning from watching the big guys.
Francis, if you get the breed to pair, I want some tiger tails, just to let you know. Okay, next question from Francis. And Francis, you're amazing. Please go post questions on my post because these are great questions.
Yeah.
And we will answer them more fully next week with Dan, and I'll present them, and he'll have some details with peroxide levels and etc. But if seahorse hobbyists, future owners are interested in advocating and or partaking in the ethical production of CB seahorses, in the pet trade, what questions should be asked? This is a long question. Wine. What questions should be asked for general LFS locations? And do Seahorse Source and Alyssa Seahorse Savvy differ from? Now I got to go to the next question. Hang on.
Yes,
I missed it. Anyways, go ahead.
Source and Alicia Seahorse Savvy differ from, say, buying in a pet store, or fish store, that kind of stuff. The difference is breeders such as Alicia and Dan are only using brood stock that, if it was wild caught at some point, they have probably moved a couple generations past by this point. They do very carefully quarantine any new imports from anywhere, regardless of what the seller says. They're essentially they're only dealing with captive bred seahorses. And I know, in fact, both Dan and Alicia have spent a lot of time growing out brood stock. I mean, you're going to spend a year growing out your brood stock before you ever get into a breeding situation with them, because you want to be sure that they're healthy, they're specific pathogen free, they're free of any parasites, and you want to give them the best chance, and yourself the best chance, of raising the largest number of healthy fry. And that's the difference between true people that
Breeders, right?
versus people that are just trying to make a quick buck.
And I think that's an excellent question. Again, we're going to ask Dan that next week. And I think your question has like 3 different parts. So I got the depth of your question. Come back next week, because none of us are technically capable of answering the commercial end of that question. So, I mean, they are, but Dan will answer it better. So we'll ask it next week. And yeah.
The problem that arises is you get, whether there be poachers or just collectors that don't know what they're collecting, those then go to a wholesaler. The wholesaler doesn't know what he's looking at, so it may or may not be mislabeled, even for whether it be captive. Everything, quote, is captive bred if they can sell it.
Right. And exactly. And we had a few weeks ago on Wine Wednesday a case where we showed seahorses, and they were Hippocampus hystrix, but they were labeled as something else. So it's a great question about what to ask the store, whether you should even go to the store. We here on this channel absolutely promote supporting your local fish stores when it comes to buying things like pumps and etc. But when it comes to buying seahorses,
go to a reputable breeder if you can.
I would say that, because if you do buy captive bred from a local fish store, they should be able to tell you who bred them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I have occasionally sold mine to local fish stores, and they have my information. They have my flyer in the store, my business cards, and there aren't people out there doing it. There's nobody doing it. So if they don't know where the captive bred came from, that's a big red flag, because hardly anybody raises seahorses, honestly. So they should know where it came from.
Agreed. But I do want to say also that when I went and I spoke at the Chicago show, I met a few people that were working on helping these other countries work on captive bred programs where they're truly captive bred. Don't put those people out of work, but instead of them just catching them and selling them, actually breed them. So it's an extensive question. I don't think I just think you have to know what you need to ask, and we'll cover it next week.
You have to have a trust because it's like San Antonio is a big city. There are a lot of fish stores in San Antonio. There is one fish store that I sell to. And the reason I will sell to them is they have a dedicated 60-gallon cube on their own sump with their own chiller. The person that takes care of the seahorses is actually an old-time, long-time member of seahorse.org and has worked with tiger-tailed seahorses and hasn't had much success raising them, but did her best trying. So you've got a situation where you've got a dedicated tank with all the right parameters, with somebody that's experienced keeping seahorses and knows what they're talking about.
Really quick, guys. I want to say Ray has to go. Thank you so much for coming, Ray. We appreciate your
Good
expertise.
night, all.
Yes.
Good night, Ray.
Stay
Please
safe.
come next week, and we'll have you talk more. Us women always gab, and you never get a chance. Sorry.
I think I'd pass on that because I'm a believer in too many cooks wreck the broth, and I think Dan should be the principal person doing the talking. You and Dan.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I mean after that.
That's
if
my
you're able.
personal thoughts.
No, I agree. I meant like after I ask him the questions that have been asked. But if you can't come or you don't want to, it's fine. We just appreciate you coming when you can.
Yes.
We just appreciate you.
On nights like that, it's easier for me to sit in my chair and go to the YouTube and follow.
Mhm.
Everybody follow Ray to the YouTube. But no, Ray, we just appreciate you. Have a good night.
Good night,
Hope
all.
things are better.
Good night, Ray.
Okay. Go on, Cheryl. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was just saying, I'm very, very particular. I've told more than one person. I'm little Dan. When the first time I talked with him, he told me basically he wouldn't sell me a seahorse until I knew what I was doing.
Yep, he told me too.
Well, I have done the same thing to people. Some people get annoyed and walk away. Some people do the right thing and keep coming back to you and asking you more questions as they're setting up a tank and listen.
Well, they're just setting you up for success. I mean, they just want you to
exactly.
succeed.
And it's like a friend of mine. He was setting up a seahorse tank. I told him how to do a fishless cycle. He went to a local fish store. They sold him a bunch of live rock. Told him you can't do a fishless cycle. He put some chromis in there. And the next thing he did is he had all kinds of bristleworms and aptasia and all kinds of garbage in that tank. And he ended up having to tear the whole thing down and start over again. So it's one of those things where I don't respect stores that I never know. I don't want to say they're lying, but if they don't know enough to be able to say, hey, look, you can do a fishless cycle. This is how you do it, and teach people. I have a little trouble respecting that business.
And hey, just side note, Francis, Chimp had a great suggestion about watching the replay with closed captioning for the comment on the screen. But I will tell you that is actually, I know I say things and then you guys don't see them, but it's because I'm working so hard to get so many things done. And when the website does go up, that's my entire purpose is I'll have the video at the top covering a topic, and then I'll have the written outline, maybe not transcript, but the outline of what we talked about. I am working on it, I promise. And we appreciate you coming and asking all these questions. And many of these questions we're going to talk about next week. But yeah, I am working on it. I do want to make sure that is a thing where someone can come and read instead of just watch the video, because I know we ramble, me especially. But great suggestion, and we will do it. So, all right, guys. As I said, I do have to go by 9:45, so we got 30 minutes. Holly, Cheryl, anything else you guys want to talk about? Sorry if I cut you off.
Crossing my fingers, everybody keeps doing what they're doing. I'm just so tickled with the way these. I've been very fortunate in getting some beautiful seahorses that I've been able to bring in.
Mm-hmm.
Holly, I want to give you a chance.
Yeah.
Did you have something to ask? Because I do have one more question.
No, I don't. I don't think I have any questions. Actually, everybody on my end's doing great. I will say this. Remember we were talking about I had a new thing to read my not pH, the
Oh,
phosphate.
yeah. Yeah.
Phosphates. And remember I was saying it's a
Yeah.
low range. So it was my one tank was reading off the chart like 200. Well, the reason why I was able to translate it, it's because that test reads in parts per billion and most tests
Mm.
are in parts per million, and I didn't know how many spaces to move over the decimal point. So what it is that in my grow out tank, my phosphates, it turns out, are 0.03.
Yeah.
They're zero, really. And
Yeah.
then in my display tank, they are 0.2.
Oh,
So,
wow.
which to me it's kind of high, but it's not off the charts high.
No, no.
The test is showing me 200. But that
Gotcha.
doesn't mean 200. On a normal test, it's 0.2.
Yeah. Was
Right.
this the checker that you bought?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a Hannah, but it's an
Yeah.
ultra low range.
Yeah.
So on my grow out tank, if I did it on a regular reader,
You would
it'd
get it.
say 0. I did it at the display tank, which is right in the range that I'm getting actually on my API test, the display tank would read at 0.25.
Right.
So
And
I think it is
as you
that.
get used to it, you'll figure it out and you'll know
Well,
when
now
there's
I
enough.
know it's 2
Yeah.
decimal places.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh
the
God,
problem
math. Oh no.
is if
No
my
math.
phosphates are higher than 0.25 or zero point 0.2, it won't read it.
Mm.
So I almost need to get another reader to do in parts per million, I guess, or
Or
something.
you keep them under 0.25, which is
The
different, but
last
I get
time
it.
I
Yeah.
tested for phosphates would be several years ago.
And I never test for them, honest. I don't test my tanks like but once a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Normally,
right. But there's
because they've
nothing
been
wrong with
around a
testing.
while. But
Like Chimp.
I got the new tester and I wanted to see how it compares.
Yeah.
And
Right,
the phosphate
exactly.
test I've always heard is a tough one unless you have like the Hannah checkers. They're not as accurate like your chemical style tests, I
Well, and
guess.
Chimp the Reefer just said he loves the Hannah checkers.
Mhm.
I love them too because they give you a detailed, like down
It's
to the.
very detailed, yeah.
But that's
And
good because that's what you want to
mhm,
know. I mean,
Well,
if you're having an organic problem, an algae problem, and you have
mhm.
phosphates, that's your answer.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, if you've got green hair algae, you got phosphates in your tank. Bottom line.
yeah.
Right. I
And
have a video about that. Watch it. Okay. I am going to have to go soon, but Cheryl, I did want to ask you before you go just to talk a little bit. We'll talk about this next week too. But if you watch the video from where I came home from vacation, and I was so happy with my seahorse sitter, you notice that the female that's in the video, I only took a video of 2 of the seahorses, but she has a ball on her tail.
yeah,
Just the end of her tail, it's just like a little ball. When
yeah,
she
you
came
can't
in the
have
bag, wait.
say
Let me
one.
explain the
Yeah.
circumstance before you tell me. So go watch the video, but it was a little teeny ball on the end of her tank when she came to me as a little teeny seahorse, right? And I messaged Cheryl and I said, is this like tail rot or the beginning, or is this a problem? I don't know what to do. And Cheryl walked me through it and we checked everything, and there just didn't seem to be any progression of it. And then now you can see in the video that the ball is bigger, but so is the seahorse, right? So the
Yeah.
seahorse is like this big now, and the ball is a little bit bigger than when I got her, but it seems to be growing with her, as in, okay, shush, kids, as in a deformity. So I think it's just a deformity that's not affecting her in
Yeah.
any bad way.
It's
It could
part
have
of
been
her. It's not an infection.
no, no. It could have been an injury that occurred when she was very tiny to the tip of her tail that broke off a piece of bone and healed over. It could be, it's hard to say what caused it. The fact is, it's not causing her any problems. It's not an infection.
Mhm.
It's not causing her, it hasn't done any damage to her. She's totally normal in all respects.
Mhm.
And I suspect it was either something genetic happened or happened in the pouch that could have injured the tip of her tail,
Yeah.
or it could have been injured shortly after she was born. And again, who knows what could have injured her.
Or it could have even injured her on the way to me, but she's a macho woman, and she just said this tail ball isn't going to hurt me. But my point being that if your seahorse has a problem, don't automatically assume it's something terrible and start treating them. Come to us, come to Seahorse Sources group. Let us help you, because Dan and Cheryl helped me realize, no, you don't want to put her in antibiotics or anything like that. Let's see if it actually is a problem or if it's just who she is. She has a tail ball. It's her thing, you know?
I admire people that freak out when they think something's wrong with their seahorse. And I love it. Well, no. And I love it when people say, oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yes.
But I've been at
When
this.
people listen to the experts, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've been doing this for 17 years. I've probably seen it more than once before over the years. And you kind of get, you get the point where you know what you're looking for parasites or
Mhm.
bacterial infections or who knows?
Anything, right. Well, and in this case, when I saw the ball, I saw it before I even opened the bag when I got these seahorses, when they were temp acclimating in the bag, still closed. And I thought, well, that looks like something bad, but it didn't. Like, if you go look at my pictures, and I'll post more when we're done, it's literally at the absolute end of her tail. It's like the skin just forms a ball. So it's not like a bubble on her tail. It's like she's a dragoness. She has a ball at the end of her tail.
There's something happened to the very tip of her tail. And again, I probably isn't genetic. I'm guessing that somehow she broke a bone in there. Either that, or if you look at the seahorse, the way the seahorse tail is formed, it's actually 4 boxes that fit together in each segment, and they move in and out. So if she got that stuck on something and broke one of those boxes, the tip of her tail is not going to move properly.
Mhm.
Right. Well, I'm still going to go with she's a dragoness, and she was just meant to be awesome and different.
Yeah.
So that's it. The Seahorse Corner, I completely forgot to cover your piebald. I got to go get my kid from work, but I will make this a question next week that we can cover in depth with Seahorse Source, if that's okay. Apologies for any other questions that I missed, but I love you all for coming. And guys, we're going to have to do last words because I do have to go pick up my daughter. Sorry.
Oh, no, just send your significant other to do that.
He's at work too. I'm the only one who gets to sit here and do. But Holly, did you have anything else?
No, I don't think so. My sock changing habit is because I need to make it a habit. If I don't make it a habit, I won't do it. So it's my daily.
My mother always said, change your socks daily.
Every day, yeah. No, and I have enough. I have enough for a week's supply, and they go in the laundry every week. So I just started changing it as part of my morning routine. And then every Wednesday is the water change and tank cleaning day. And that way I don't have to think about it. It's just habit.
It's just automatic.
Believe it or not, Wednesday's my water change day too. I always do it after wine Wednesday. You can imagine how well that goes.
Before. Yeah, I was going to say.
Every day is water change day in my house.
That's got to be tough. I'm just glad the hospital tank is done. I don't know. That was an extra hour to my days every day. And now that thing 2 is back home and out of the hospital, it saves me a lot of time and a lot of salt.
Yes, thank goodness though.
I gave him less than a 10%, less than a 5% chance when you got him back that he would make it through the next couple of weeks.
And
Yeah,
you did it.
I
But you did it.
didn't think he was going to make
You've
it.
done
He
one
looked
heck
so
of a
bad,
job.
and he looks bad now. Granted, I mean he does. But people didn't see him. I didn't really post pictures of him before.
When you got
That
him back, he was a train wreck.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, he was
right.
floating. He was horrible shape.
But
Huge
she did
tailbone.
it.
Hey,
And she's willing to cover and share, if you ever have those kind of problems, what she did to make him better. I mean, I think it's amazing and great.
well, I told you
So
about
hats
Matthew's
off.
horse that he lives in France and had a huge chunk out of its back directly below the dorsal fin. I think I sent you that information.
Oh,
And a huge, I mean, I'm talking a hole. I don't even know how he swam because it had to have damaged the spine.
mm-hmm.
And he spent, I want to say, 3 months. And he kept sending me pictures. I said, well, see, the wound is getting smaller.
It's
The
getting
wound is,
better, right?
and danged if that seahorse didn't make it.
Yep. So cheers to you. Sorry, I'm all over the screen. Cheers to you, Cheryl, Dan, Seahorse Source, Holly, everybody who not only helps others in these problems. And if you're new, you likely won't have these problems. You're never, in Holly's case, she had a seahorse that she sold and the person couldn't take care of it and came back to her and he had problems. So if you buy a captive bred seahorse, you're not going to have these problems. But we're going to ask every question that was vital in this week's episode of Open Chat next week with Seahorse Source, and he'll have some details and better answers than us.
Oh, wait until Dan goes, I disagree with you.
Yeah, no, I love it though. See, there's no really
I'm kidding
right
about
answers.
that. I'm
Yeah.
kidding about that.
Okay. But I gotta go pick up the kids. I hope everyone who watches had an amazing Christmas, Hanukkah, anything you celebrate. I hope that you will have amazing New Year's and want to hear your stories, want to help you with your seahorses, want to see your seahorses, and want to have you here on Wine Wednesday. We're so close to 3,000. Tell your friends to subscribe. All right, I'm done. Everybody say cheers.
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 Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone.
Happy New Year. Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
That's
It's
right.
going to be 2022 next time we talk.
Yep,
Exactly. So happy New Year. I'm going to make myself big just so I can do the cheers. Yeah. All right. Happy New Year. Happy Wine Wednesday. See you next week. Get your questions in by midnight. Cheers.
Good night. Love the glass.